Yeah, I'm Laurie. I'm 43.
They are normal, everyday Kiwis with a secret that sets them apart.
There's a lot of people like me, your neighbour, probably someone who was involved in the government as well.
With careers.
Yeah, they work for a government agency.
Responsibilities.
I have 2 young children, a job, a mortgage.
And a lifeline they have to hide.
Even though I was helping myself, I was being a criminal.
Modern medicine has failed these Kiwis.
So what you found was there's no cure?
No cure.
So they've turned in desperation to something else.
I was as good as dead, so I didn't have a lot to lose.
They're taking psilocybin for medicinal purposes, magic mushrooms, an illegal drug.
I take around 2 grams of dried magic mushrooms every Saturday.
An underground movement is growing in New Zealand.
How many Kiwis do you think are out there doing this?
Oh, lots. Lots more than I would admit it.
Its users say it's all that helps.
It saved my life.
But everyone is at risk of arrest. In New Zealand, magic mushrooms sit next to heroin at the top of the list of prohibited drugs.
Are you worried about getting arrested?
Of course. I'm openly admitting on national TV I take Class A drugs. I'm concerned about the implications, but I also think it's a story that needs telling.
The pain.
Laurie's story starts in 2017 with the sudden onset of serious pain.
I thought I had a brain tumour. Thought I was dying.
She was diagnosed with cluster headaches.
It is the most excruciating pain you can imagine.
Considered more painful than kidney stones or childbirth, cluster headaches come in bunches, striking multiple times a day.
There's a reason cluster headaches are nicknamed suicide headaches. And there is times when you're in that amount of pain where it feels like death is the only way to stop it.
Doctors don't understand what causes it, and treatments often have little effect.
The only other pharmaceutical medication that could be prescribed to me was lithium, which would mean I can't work, I can't have my children unattended.
For a single mum, it wasn't an option, so she looked outside the law. She turned to psilocybin, magic mushrooms.
At that point, I would have taken anything that showed a glimmer of help. I took a reasonably high dose, a bit more than a microdose, and I didn't have a single cluster attack for 4 whole days, which was just like, oh, this is going to be a lifesaver.
It's a choice many others like Laurie have faced, and for some, lifesaver is a literal term.
I have been on a total of 13 medications for my mental illness alone.
Michaela was diagnosed in her early teens with psychosis, depression, and dissociation.
These are my medical records from being in the mental health system since 2010.
What do you feel when you look at these records?
Ill.
Every page is another failed treatment, psychiatric admissions and pharmaceutical drugs.
The pharmaceuticals never helped me. They never made a difference. In fact, they made me worse. I was very much at the end of my road.
Michaela decided to try magic mushrooms after receiving advice from a friend.
I was terrified, very much because of the law, but also because it's a psychedelic, it's a hallucinogenic. You don't quite know what effect it's going to have.
And how did it go?
After that first initial dose, the intrusive suicidal thoughts, which I have lived with pretty much my entire life, stopped.
It was enough to begin microdosing, taking small amounts of psilocybin, a fraction of what would be used to get high with no hallucinogenic effect.
By my 15th microdose, I was starting to see shifts in my depression, my anxiety, my PTSD, and my disassociation. It saved my life. That's the only way to put it, really.
Other Kiwis tell similar stories.
I was at the bottom, so I was just open to trying anything.
Long battles with mental illness.
It's coloured my entire life.
prescription medications that didn't work.
I've been on escitalopram, fluoxetine, risperidone, mirtazapine.
And the Class A drug, which did.
It was an immediate effect within just a few days of taking them. I was incredibly low, very suicidal. Yeah, so it saved my life.
But the very thing that helps them could see them arrested if they're caught.
Well, obviously, given my job, it is a huge risk to be taking it.
People convicted of possessing magic mushrooms can be jailed for up to 6 months. But for those who go further, who grow or supply them, the penalties are much, much worse.
That would be your recreational dose.
We visited someone who takes those risks, not for profit, but for others' health.
So this would be an example of a microdose, which is 0.1 of a gram.
What would someone who's microdosing do with that?
So essentially many will grind it up and put it into small capsules.
Here, magic mushrooms are grown with precision, from spores to solutions to the finished product.
And these are psychedelic mushrooms ready to go.
Psychedelic mushrooms, fresh but ready to be consumed. Yep.
They're grown for others to use therapeutically, but this is dangerous under the law. The penalty for growing or supplying these mushrooms is a maximum of life in jail.
It's meant to be based on evidence of harm, but rather it seems to be based on no science or evidence whatsoever.
A study of the harm caused by drugs was published by medical journal The Lancet, ranking total harm to users and others, with the worst at the top. The most harmful of all is legal. Alcohol sits at the top of the list. Heroin is the next most harmful. Methamphetamine and cocaine sit, unsurprisingly, close behind. Heroin, meth and coke are Class A substances in New Zealand, but another 2 drugs are on that list. LSD and magic mushrooms. In terms of harm to users and others, they're at the bottom of the Lancet scale.
You have to look at, does it have a risk to the public? Does it have risk of having dependency created for the user? What is the risk to their well-being? And they seem to be light years away from each other.
The New Zealand Drug Foundation exists to reduce the harm from drugs. They say the Misuse of Drugs Act should be rewritten. The Health Minister says not yet.
I'm satisfied that it's doing the job at the moment. It's a reasonably old piece of legislation. There will come a time when it will be appropriate to review it, but it's not on our agenda at the moment.
The science on illegal drugs is limited, but there's growing evidence magic mushrooms can help with everything from cluster headaches to depression and PTSD. A landmark study in 2016 by prestigious Johns Hopkins University found 2 doses of magic mushrooms relieved severe depression for a month.
There's a huge amount of excitement and a huge amount of anecdotal evidence and some early promising trials.
At the University of Auckland, Dr. Suresh Muthukumaraswamy is studying the impacts of illegal psychedelics, running new research on microdosing.
There may be thousands of New Zealanders out there microdosing at the moment, and most of them might be doing it for some kind of mental health condition.
Tiny doses of LSD have long been touted in Silicon Valley.
They might say have improved productivity, improved focus in their everyday activities.
It's being tested here on healthy volunteers to see whether those claims stack up.
Is this really working, or potentially are they doing harm to themselves?
More research is needed to provide those answers, but LSD and magic mushrooms could one day be legitimate treatments alongside prescription drugs.
We've spoken to a number of New Zealanders for this story. They all say it's worked where nothing else had.
Yep.
Is there likely to be merit to those claims?
There could well be. That's my job to try and find out, right?
The science isn't settled, but many Kiwis are already convinced.
I still sometimes wonder if I'm kidding myself, but the proof is there.
It's become part of their daily lives.
So I get them already dried, grind them up in small amounts.
So you prepare this yourself?
Yep, stuff it in, pack it down. I'm left with these, which I just have with a drink of water.
And what would it mean for you if you now had to go without?
This is what enables me to have a meaningful, useful life.
For them, magic mushrooms are medicine.
I'm not a junkie. I'm not doing this for fun. I'm doing this so that I can parent my children, so that I can contribute to society.
But not in the eyes of the law.
So what do you think of the fact that it's a Class A drug?
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
It breaks my heart.
Michaela chose to give up magic mushrooms to tell others what they did for her. She wants to write a book about her experience, but confessing to drug use is risky. She's chosen her story over her health.
You wouldn't withhold chemo from someone who has cancer. You wouldn't withhold heart medication. And my medication is not. It's not legal.
She'd like it to be legal for medicinal purposes.
It's maybe one less death.
That would be worth it.
It was for me. It was for my family.